and welcome to BBC Sport Africa. Today we bring you a very special programme from Essex near London. Coming up in the show, we find out what's holding back Africa's Paralympians. At 14 years old, Abdi Jama suffered a devastating accident, but it's sport that's been his light.
Wheelchair basketball changed my life, not just as in a sportsman, but as in a life, as in what I was doing.
We meet a one-legged motocross champion who's always ready to rise to a challenge. And you've heard of the Super Eagles of Nigeria, but we introduce you to the Special Eagles. And another contestant is put to the test in our rapid-fire armchair expert. Hello and welcome to BBC Sport Africa, the show that brings you the continent's biggest names from its biggest games. I'm Isaac Fannin and I am delighted to welcome you to the programme from Harlow in Essex, which is around about 20 miles north of London. Now you might be wondering what it is we're doing here. I'll explain that a little bit later on in the programme, but I bet you have noticed a specific theme. This programme is going to be full of sports stars living with a disability. Next year, Morocco will host the first ever Para Games in Africa. It will be a huge moment of recognition for athletes there, as well as an opportunity to qualify for the Tokyo 2020 Paralympic Games. While holding a competition for the first time might make it seem as though the continent is making huge progress, people living with disabilities are facing huge challenges making it as sportsmen and women. Celestine Caronet went to Kenya to find out more.
Sometimes I feel treated like a person who's different because sometimes I do things which people don't understand. For example, when walking, I can hit objects on the road and some people judge me as being drunk early in the day.
Hannah Mwangi is a T12 Paralympian, a category for partially sighted athletes who runs the 100 meters, 200 meters and 400 meters, and from a young age she understood life was always going to be different.
One of my eyes inaonanga.
I can see partially from one of my eyes and I can't see completely out of the other, and as a child, children would tease me that I look like a chicken every time I squint when focusing on an item so I can make out what it is.
According to the World Health Organization, at least 10 to 15% of every population are persons living with disability. That would mean at least 4.5 to 6 million Kenyans. The last census in Kenya 10 years ago put the number of people living with disability at 1.3 million. But less than half are registered with the National Council for Persons with Disabilities, the body tasked with protecting their rights. Hannah earns money from being an athlete, but that is not enough. She has to find an alternate source of income.
When I'm not competing or preparing to compete, I work in this pastry shop that I own and run. After training, this is where you'll find me till late in the evening. I find it easier to be self-employed than seek employment because many people don't understand your condition. I really wanted to become a beautician, but I couldn't last 2 months because I struggled to get anything right. But here I can work on my pastry even without looking, and the design comes out just fine. I prioritize sport because it is my passion.
Africa will host its first ever Continental Parasport Championships early next year. Kenya has a vibrant Paralympic scene. Since first competing in the Paralympics in 1972, the country has won a total of 48 medals, 19 of which are gold. But it has not been an easy road for those who represent Kenya.
Our events come once in a while and the main sponsor is government, and like our last trip in Marrakech, Morocco, we earned very little money compared to what we spend on training, and this money came late.
In May this year, a group of Paralympic athletes took their pay dispute to the Ministry of Sport. Some of them found themselves in a physical altercation with police.
For me, this was the right thing to do because it made everyone aware of our plight. Many times we feel that we are hidden from the limelight, but with our actions, Kenyans knew about us and our problems.
The government blamed the Paralympic Association for the delay, saying they were not compliant with the law.
At that time, there were two federations or two factions within the federation that were not very clear as to who is handling what. And when it comes to public funds, there is requirement for clarity, there is requirement for compliance.
But financial issues could be eased after the Kenyan government launched a fund which Parasport will be eligible to apply for. The largest part of this pot of money is taken from taxing betting companies.
The National Arts and Social Development Fund is meant to ensure that sports and arts are funded and are prioritized in the budgeting system in government. Those people that have been marginalized in the past to receiving this access are the people we are reaching out to deliberately.
While sport tries to get its affairs in order, socially, life is still challenging for people living with disability.
In Kenya, there's little consideration for people living with disability. Public transport isn't suited for people with wheelchairs, and sometimes as a person living with disability, you are robbed, or people may not even want to sit next to you in public, thinking your condition is contagious.
The Kenyan Constitution recognizes disability rights, which provides a tax exemption as well as the social welfare allowance to help those living with disability, but very few receive this allowance.
Where we have a demand of 100,000 and I'm only to give 2,000, so the rest will give up. One thing I must confess is that our communication between us and persons with disability has been very low.
While the authorities in Kenya struggle to catch up with the rights the Constitution gives to people living with disability, Hannah, like many others, continues to feel alienated from the society she lives in.
Now, I promised you I'd explain to you why we're here in Harlow at this track, and the reason is because of this lady. This is Ann Wafula Strike, who trains here in Harlow. She has represented both Kenya and Great Britain. Why sport for disability athletes, Anne?
Sport is very powerful. You know, sports unites, it connects people. And above all, I believe that sport can actually be a very strong and powerful catalyst to break down barriers that are continually marginalizing people with disabilities.
You speak about marginalizing there, and we heard earlier about the athletes talking about how they felt marginalized and uncomfortable often as disability athletes. Is that something that happens all the time?
Marginalization is a daily occurrence to someone living with a disability. I face it, everybody faces it. And I think it's very, very dehumanizing to see that someone with a disability cannot even ask for their fundamental rights. You know, sport is something that every child, every person should be allowed to play.
Clearly, funding is a very, very important thing. We heard that earlier on. Is it the key thing for a disability, an athlete living with a disability?
When you have the funds, you can invest in building or setting up accessible facilities. You know, the athletes can be able to travel abroad, you know, for competitions, even buying kits, you know. So funding is very, very important.
Is there any country that gets it right when it comes to para-athlete funding?
Great Britain is getting it right. We have the lottery, and athletes, you know, the elite athletes are on funding, and actually this money that people go out to buy tickets, you know, in order,
from the lottery, right?
You know, from the lottery,
yeah,
for, you know, hoping that they're going to win some money. A lot of it goes back into building the communities or funding the athletes. And I'm sure African nations can adopt this. They can come up with a model that is sustainable.
And really appreciate hearing your thoughts. We're going to hear from you a little bit later on, so don't go anywhere, but thank you very much for that. Now, next story is about a guy who was born in Somalia and is now a European basketball champion. Abdi Jama fled Somalia at the age of 6 years old to England, where he settled. After that, he suffered a devastating accident at the age of 14 that left him paralysed. But now he represents Team GB at the wheelchair basketball. I went to meet him in Sheffield, where we shot some hoops, and I found out a little bit more about his life.
Wheelchair basketball changed my life. It gave me a purpose in life.
Abdi Jama left Somalia at the age of 6 years old to escape the civil war there. He moved to Liverpool in England with his family and began to build a new life. But 8 years later, a tragic accident.
I was sitting on a windowsill and basically the window was wide open. There was a curtain over the window. I didn't realise at that time it was a sunny day, you know, it wasn't windy or anything, so the curtain wasn't moving. As I leaned back, I went straight through the window because it was wide open and damaged my back. Woke up 2 weeks later in hospital.
What was it like when you woke up and they told you that you might not be able to walk again?
I'm one of them people that believe in, you know, things happen for a reason. And even at 14 years old, I was quite mature for my age. So, I remember when the consultant came over and my mum was there, the psychologist, all these other people was there, and they told me that I couldn't walk. And my first reaction was, okay, I'm actually lucky to be alive. Apparently I died twice in a coma or something. So, I don't remember any of this, but, I was lucky to be alive, and I knew that life goes on.
How did you find wheelchair basketball?
I was in school, I was doing PE, and a guy who's actually a good friend of mine came to the school. His name is Adi Orabemi. He's originally from Nigeria as well. And he was part of the GB team at that time. And I actually never seen wheelchair basketball before. He told me, why don't you try it, give it a go? And as soon as I got in the chair, he saw me like I was something in me anyway. And he was like, man, you're good, man. You could be actually really good. Why don't you come to the Liverpool Sports Academy to have a go? I couldn't reach the basket. I couldn't do anything. I was thinking, maybe this is not for me, this. But he gave me the encouragement. He said, listen, just keep going, believe in yourself. And he gave me a lot of encouragement. And seeing this guy do things that I couldn't do was incredible. I could relate to him because a fellow African brother was showing me the ways of how to do stuff.
Abdi's gone on to flourish in the sport, winning pretty much all there is to win in the game. The Paralympic gold medal is on his to-do list, but first, a big challenge from me. So, I'm terrible at basketball, but I'm competitive, so are we ready? Bang, no. Bang, no. So do you think you could have achieved anything you achieved like this if you lived in Somalia?
I'd say no. It'd be difficult because just let alone being a sportsman, I think just being a disabled athlete or just being a disabled person, I don't think I would have achieved what I've achieved, even come close to it.
Obviously being a GB athlete is an incredible thing to be able to say. How do they make it easy for you guys as athletes to
for sure. When you play for GB, it's the pinnacle, basically. You get the funding here, the facilities, the wheelchair aspect. We got the top of the range, wheelchairs, and that's the biggest factor, To have that, it's a, a lot of countries in the world don't even have that. In Africa, we lag behind this, and we are far behind this. Yeah. Because I know there's a lot of African teams that, including Nigeria. I know Kenya has a team. I know a lot of teams. I know Morocco and all these teams there's African Nations Cup, so I know there's a lot of. But even then, the standard is very behind. It's very low. Yeah. And to get that standard to a level that it should be, you need to see, disabled people as athletes, not just as people that are disabled. For me, I would love to go back home and, do stuff back home as well, even for myself. Yeah. One day, maybe coach the Somaliland teams.
It was so inspiring meeting Abdi. What a story he has. We've got plenty more coming up after the break, including meeting a motocross champion in Kenya who only has one leg. This is Sport Africa from the BBC. Hello and welcome back to BBC Sport Africa, coming to you from Harlow in Essex. Now our next story is about a very special football team in Nigeria. In fact, they're so special, they're nicknamed the Special Eagles. They are the country's amputee football team, and they're made up of a group of men who refuse to allow their passions to be dimmed by their disabilities.
People see disability, myself, I see ability.
The greatest disability is in the mind.
I see courage. I can remember my accident like yesterday. When after the accident, when I come back to Lagos, for 2 years I couldn't come out. I was like shaming, like how could somebody have 2 hands, travel, come back in January, having 1 hand, I couldn't come out.
I love football more than any other thing. Football is not only my hobby, but it's part of me. I was referred to the orthopedic hospital after 1 week or 1 week plus. When we reached there, the doctor said that the leg must be cut off. I spent 4 months and 3 weeks in orthopedic hospital. After everything, I got back to ball again. I still play ball now. People did not believe it. If I'm not getting any pay from the government, nobody is paying me. It's because of the passion I have the game, the passion I have for Nigeria, my country. That is why I'm playing the game. After everything, I have to run to the road to hustle for my family. If I did not work, it means any day that I did not work on the road, there will be no food on the house.
I was born this way. Actually, all my life I've known myself this way. Sometimes, when I go to the club, I and my friends, all my friends will go. The bouncers will not allow me enter. They'll be like, you can't take crutches in. So that one pains me a lot. Social media helped me to be very, very confident, like with who I am, how I am, because I have many friends on social media. We meet a lot, and going on social media, checking celebrities' pictures and all that. So from then I started dressing very well, so that not that when I'm working on someone else wants to give me money, like as if I'm begging.
Football is football. I will come out. Also like Kanwanko and other people and Jejo Kocha. So I also come out as a World Cup player.
What people don't understand about disability is that many didn't pray to be that way. It's happened.
People with disability, they are the pride of this nation, I mean Nigeria.
It's time now for Armchair Expert. 60 seconds to answer as many questions as you can.
Hi, my name is Femi. I'm a die-hard Chelsea fan. I've been longing to be here on Armchair's Expert, and finally, I'm here. My best sporting moment was Atlanta '96, when Nigeria won the Olympic gold medal after a struggle through the semi-finals, then finally defeating another South American team in the final.
Okay, Femi, your time starts now. Nigeria lost 3-0 in their opening game of the Women's World Cup, but which country beat them, Denmark or Norway?
Norway.
Correct. Anthony Joshua lost his heavyweight titles to which Mexican fighter?
Andrew Ruiz.
Correct. In wheelchair racing, what has to cross the line first to judge when an athlete has finished the race? The wheel of the wheelchair or the athlete's chest?
The athlete's chest.
The wheel. The para in Paralympic Games is short for parallel. True or false?
True.
Correct. Who is the current BBC African Footballer of the Year?
Pass.
Mo Salah. Who were the only African team to play in this year's Cricket World Cup?
Nigeria.
South Africa. Which African country won last year's Amputee Football World Cup? Angola or Cameroon?
Cameroon.
Angola. Which African country has won the most medals at the Paralympics? South Africa or Nigeria?
Nigeria.
South Africa. Which African country has won a bronze, silver and gold medal in football at 3 different Olympic Games?
Nigeria.
Correct. Okay, Femi, you have 4 out of 9 questions. How does that make you feel?
Oh well, 4 out of 9, not too bad, but I'll give it a better try next time.
Now I am delighted to welcome back our Paralympic wheelchair racer Ann Wafula Strike. And I really want to know, who would you say is your Paralympic sporting hero of the moment?
Being a woman with a disability, I would say Rwanda is doing an amazing job. You know, the sitting volleyball is something that they're excelling in. And it's just good to see that actually with little funding that they've got, you know, the little resources they've got, they've invested it really well.
Where do you think that this success is coming from?
So seated volleyball is a sport that does not actually require a lot of equipment. You just need to sit down, but they've got the passion to support, you know, the athletes who are living with a disability.
Now, we know that can sometimes be difficult for an athlete living with disabilities. Can you give me a sporting zero that is making it even harder?
It is so frustrating when you go to a tournament and you see a nation that has sent their athletes to such a big tournament without kit, and sometimes athletes being thrown out of their hotel because it has not been paid for.
Is that something that happens often?
That is something that is going on. It's not, you know, if you've had it, that is not the first time. Disabled people leave their countries, go out for tournaments, and they're embarrassed, or they're really reduced to nothing because sometimes they don't even get to the call room. They don't report to the competition venue because they don't have the transport to assist them from the hotel or the accommodation to the competition venue. So to me, that is a total zero.
And thank you so much for taking the time to speak to me. It's been really great hearing your thoughts. And yeah, really love the work that you're doing. So thank you very much for that. Now, our next story comes from Kenya, which also happens to be Ann's home country. Extreme sports is challenging for most people, but the reason why people love it is because of the thrill, the danger. So imagine all of those risks, all of that danger, but you've only got one leg.
The bike in itself is unforgiving, but the sport in totality has got a lot to do with how you carry around yourself. It doesn't guarantee you that if you run away from the sport, you get to live longer. My name is Cassandra Bill. I'm a biker and I'm a proud amputee. I lost my foot on 11th of October 2015. It was one easy day. Me and a bunch of friends were out having fun. And for bikers, having fun is you are on a platform where you get to test the speed of your bike. So we are basically racing on the road. Something happened and I lost control of the bike, went off, hit a pelican road sign. By the time the commotion had happened, I just realized, no, I was missing a foot. The most difficult part was me accepting my situation and accepting myself just the way I am. I was busy trying to compare the life that I was in at that point in time compared to the life I was living before.
So I have to dress up this baby. He's called Bobby.
I had achieved a little bit of success from my past life up until the accident, so I had fear of, from that point, I'm going down the drain. I really battled with myself to come to an understanding of it's mental, you need to deal with it and move on. I can't run away from death. I had to teach myself to learn with the fear of not knowing. If I don't know about it, if it hasn't happened, it's fine, it hasn't happened. Let me play around with the time that I have right now.
Absolutely love that story from Cassandra Bill. That's all we've got time for in this week's programme. I want to thank all the contributors. Don't forget, if you want to get in touch with us about anything you've seen in the programme, head to our Facebook and Twitter pages. And if that isn't enough, we've got a page fully dedicated to all things African sport, including disability sport. That's it for now. I'm Isaac Fannin, signing out from Essex. Goodbye.